Have you ever felt like you're drowning at work, even when you're giving it everything you've got? The deadlines never end, the expectations are endless, and despite all your effort, it still feels like you're falling short. You push through day after day, but the weight only seems to get heavier. If this sounds familiar, you're not alone. Burnout is more than just exhaustion. It's the soul-crushing feeling that you're not living up to your potential, trapped in a cycle of doing, but never truly being. But what if there was a way to break free from this cycle? What if instead of fighting against stress, you could learn to work with it, to transform it from a force that drains you into one that helps you grow? Buddhist wisdom offers a powerful antidote to burnout, teaching us how to navigate the chaos of work with mindfulness, compassion, and an inner peace that doesn't depend on constant productivity. Today, we're going to explore how these ancient teachings can help you reclaim your energy, your focus, and your sense of well-being without leaving your career behind. Stay with me, and by the end of this video, you'll not only understand why you feel burned out, but also how to use Buddhist principles to regain control, calm your mind, and create a sustainable way to thrive at work. Let's begin. Number 1, understanding the nature of stress and burnout. In today's world, stress has become more than just an occasional feeling of being overwhelmed. It's almost a permanent state for many of us. If you think about it, we've been trained to view stress as a badge of honor. Long hours, endless tasks, and the pursuit of achievement have become the norms, not the exceptions. But the real cost of this culture is far greater than just exhaustion. It's the gradual unraveling of our inner peace, our emotional stability, and our ability to truly connect with the present moment. Workplace burnout isn't just about feeling physically drained. It's much deeper. It's the emotional and mental depletion that comes when our bodies and minds are pushed beyond their natural limits for too long. The toll is insidious. At first, it's easy to brush it off. Maybe you've had a few tough weeks, or you're just not getting enough sleep. But over time, this mental and emotional strain can erode the very core of who we are. We start to feel disconnected, not just from our work, but from ourselves and others. Modern work culture amplifies this problem. We live in an era where constant connectivity has become the standard. Our emails ping, our phones buzz, and our to-do lists seem never-ending. We've become so accustomed to being on 24/7 that we've forgotten how to be off. There's a pressure to always be reachable, always be productive, always be doing something. And with the rise of remote work and digital tools, the boundaries between personal time and work time have blurred, making it even harder to switch off. This overwhelming pressure to keep going, to achieve more, to prove our worth, this is where the burnout begins. But what's often missed in the conversation is that burnout isn't a sign of personal failure. It's not that we aren't tough enough or good enough. It's a sign that the balance between work and personal well-being is off. It's a signal from our minds and bodies that we need to pause, reassess, and realign our priorities. Burnout, in many ways, is a wake-up call. It's the universe's way of telling us that something isn't right, that we're out of sync with ourselves. Yet, in the hustle and bustle of life, we often ignore that call, pushing ourselves further into exhaustion. But if we listen closely, burnout can be the beginning of a journey back to inner peace and balance. The beauty of Buddhist teachings lies in their ability to reframe our relationship with stress. Rather than seeing stress as something to conquer or defeat, Buddhist wisdom invites us to simply observe it, understand it, and most importantly, recognize that it is a passing experience. In the same way that a storm may rage across the sky, but eventually clears to reveal a calm horizon, stress too can pass, leaving us with a clearer, more centered mind. At the heart of these teachings is the concept of impermanence, the understanding that everything, including our stress and burnout, is temporary. Just as the seasons change, so too will the cycles of stress. When we embrace this natural ebb and flow, we release the need to control every moment, every outcome, and every task. Instead of feeling overwhelmed by stress, we can learn to welcome it as an opportunity for growth and transformation. But this shift doesn't come easily. It requires us to acknowledge that our worth isn't tied to the number of hours we work or the achievements we collect. True fulfillment, as the Buddhists teach, comes from finding peace within ourselves, regardless of external circumstances. When we start to live with the understanding that we are more than our jobs, we begin to move toward that elusive inner peace that so many are searching for, yet so few truly attain. In the end, burnout is not a reflection of weakness. It's a chance for us to reawaken to the truth that we are, above all else, human. And as we reconnect with this truth, we rediscover the inner peace that allows us to live fully and joyfully, without the burden of constant stress. Number 2, Buddhist teachings on stress and the mind. In the rush of modern life, stress feels almost inescapable. It lingers, it builds, and often it feels like it defines us. But what if the key to overcoming stress isn't in fighting it, but in understanding its nature, and in realizing that it's not something permanent? Buddhist teachings offer profound wisdom to help us break free from the grip of stress, and it starts with 3 powerful concepts: impermanence, non-self, and mindfulness. Impermanence, anicca. This is the core teaching that everything is temporary, including stress. Stress feels overwhelming when we believe it will last forever, when we think that the weight we carry today will still be there tomorrow, next week, or even years from now. Yet, if we take a moment to observe nature, like the rising and setting of the sun or the changing seasons, we see that nothing stays the same. Winter always turns into spring, and summer eventually gives way to autumn. The same is true for stress. When we understand that stress, just like everything else, is impermanent, we begin to loosen its hold. We stop reacting as if it will last forever and realize that it, too, will pass. This simple but powerful shift in perspective gives us a sense of relief, like a cool breeze after a long, hot day. Stress isn't something to fight against. It's something to observe, knowing that its intensity will fade just as the seasons change. Non-self, anatta. We often tie our identity to our work. We are what we do, we think. If we're productive, we feel good about ourselves. If we're not, we feel inadequate. But the more we attach ourselves to our roles, the more stress we experience. Stress arises when we define ourselves solely by our productivity or our achievements. We forget that we are more than the sum of our tasks. Buddhism teaches us that we are not our work. We are not our job titles, our career goals, or the things we accomplish. Just as a river's identity isn't defined by the single drop of water that passes through it, our true nature isn't defined by what we do at work. When we begin to let go of this attachment, stress starts to lose its grip. Think of a tree that stands tall in the forest, its branches reaching toward the sky. The tree is not defined by the leaves that fall or the seasons that change. It simply is. When we stop identifying ourselves by our work, we give ourselves the freedom to just be, to exist without the pressure to prove ourselves constantly. And in doing so, we find a sense of inner peace that isn't shaken by the demands of life. Mindfulness, sati. Stress often arises because we are not fully present. We're either dwelling on past mistakes or obsessing over future tasks. We forget to live in the moment where life is actually happening. Buddhist mindfulness teaches us to focus on the here and now, to truly experience the present moment with all our senses. Think about walking through a forest. When we're mindful, we don't rush. We pause to notice the sound of leaves rustling in the wind, the scent of pine in the air, the feeling of the ground beneath our feet. When we bring this level of awareness to our work, we stop worrying about the deadlines or the unfinished tasks. Instead, we focus on the task at hand, giving it our full attention. The act of being mindful transforms stress into something manageable, because it keeps us from spiraling into anxiety about the past or the future. In the same way that a mountain stands unmoved through the storms around it, mindfulness helps us remain grounded amidst the chaos of our workday. It allows us to respond to stress with clarity rather than react impulsively. By embracing these teachings, impermanence, non-self, and mindfulness, we begin to view stress not as a burden but as a natural part of life. We stop fighting against it and start working with it, understanding that it is just another moment in the flow of life. The more we practice these Buddhist teachings, the more we cultivate inner peace, a peace that remains unshaken by the outside world. In the end, it's not the stress itself that wears us down. It's our relationship with it. When we can shift our perspective, practice mindfulness, and detach from the need to constantly prove ourselves, we open the door to lasting peace. It's not about avoiding stress. It's about learning to live with it in a way that doesn't deplete us, but instead allows us to flourish. Number 3, practical Buddhist practices to prevent burnout. The art of managing stress isn't about avoiding it, it's about how we engage with it. In a world that demands so much of our time and energy, where deadlines constantly loom and responsibilities pile up, it can feel impossible to catch our breath. But through Buddhist teachings, we discover simple yet powerful practices that can help us navigate the pressures of life, returning to inner peace without the need for drastic changes. These practices don't require grand gestures, just small intentional shifts in how we approach each moment. Let's explore 3 key Buddhist practices that can help prevent burnout and guide us toward a more balanced, peaceful life. Mindful breathing, the foundation of calm. We all know the feeling, the tightness in our chest, the racing thoughts, the overwhelming sense of urgency. These are common reactions to stress, especially as we dive into a hectic workday. But in the midst of all this chaos, one simple practice can help us recenter and regain our clarity: mindful breathing. Mindful breathing is one of the most accessible and effective tools in Buddhism. It's about taking just 5 minutes each morning to focus solely on your breath. Imagine standing by a calm lake, feeling the cool breeze against your skin. As you inhale deeply, the air is fresh and soothing, filling your lungs. As you exhale, you feel the weight of your thoughts gently lift, leaving you lighter. That's what mindful breathing does. It anchors you in the present moment and calms the mind before it's swept away by the day's demands. By starting the day with mindful breathing, you allow yourself to step out of the constant whirlpool of thoughts and to-do lists. You're not just taking a break. You're giving yourself the space to center your mind and emotions. This simple act of mindfulness sets a foundation of calm, allowing you to face whatever comes next with clarity rather than chaos. It's a practice of self-compassion, reminding you that before you give to the world, you must first nurture yourself. Mindful pauses, a breathing space in the midst of chaos. Throughout the day, stress builds up in small, almost unnoticed ways. Maybe it's the ringing phone, the growing inbox, or the meeting that's running late. When stress starts to accumulate, it's easy to keep pushing forward, thinking that more action will solve the problem. But this only intensifies the feeling of overwhelm. This is where mindful pauses come in. Taking a moment, just a few seconds, to pause and breathe is a powerful act of mindfulness. You don't need to find a quiet corner or carve out hours of your day. Simply take a moment to stop, close your eyes if you can, and take a deep breath. Feel the air fill your lungs, notice how your body feels in that moment, and check in with your mind. Is it racing? Is there tension in your shoulders? With each breath, gently release that tension and let go of the rush. These pauses don't just prevent stress from escalating, they allow you to regain focus. By taking these mindful breaks, you're telling yourself that you're not a machine programmed to keep going, but a human being who deserves space to breathe, reflect, and recalibrate. And in those few moments, the pressure of the day starts to lift, leaving you with a sense of balance that can carry you through the rest of your tasks. Mindful pauses are a gentle reminder that life doesn't have to be a sprint. It can be a series of moments that we fully inhabit, and in doing so, we allow ourselves to live with purpose and intention. Letting go of attachment to results, the freedom of flexibility. One of the most profound lessons in Buddhist teachings is the idea of non-attachment, not just to objects, but to outcomes. In a world that celebrates achievement and results, it can be incredibly hard to detach from the outcome of our efforts. We want perfection, we want success, and when things don't go according to plan, we often feel like failures. However, attachment to outcomes is a major source of stress. When we become fixated on a particular result, we risk losing sight of the process. We begin to define our worth by the outcome of our work, and when things don't go as expected, we spiral into disappointment and frustration. Buddhism teaches us to focus on the process, not just the end result. The path we take, the effort we put in, the lessons we learn along the way, these are all part of the journey. By letting go of the need to control every outcome, we free ourselves from the pressure of perfectionism. It doesn't mean we stop caring about doing our best. It means we allow ourselves the flexibility to adapt, to learn, and to grow without the burden of unrealistic expectations. Imagine a gardener planting seeds in the earth. They nurture the soil, water the plants, and provide care. But they cannot control the weather, the growth rate, or when the flowers will bloom. They focus on the process, not the outcome, and in doing so, they find joy in the act of tending the garden, not just in the final bloom. This approach to work, to life, and to stress is liberating. It allows us to give our best without being consumed by the need to achieve perfection. These practices, mindful breathing, mindful pauses, and letting go of attachment to results, are not just techniques to manage stress. They are a path to cultivating inner peace, a way to navigate the demands of life with clarity, compassion, and balance. The beauty of these practices is that they don't require grand gestures or dramatic changes. They are simple, accessible tools that we can carry with us throughout the day, no matter how chaotic life may get. As we integrate these Buddhist practices into our lives, we begin to shift our relationship with stress. We stop seeing it as an enemy to be fought, and instead, we begin to see it as an opportunity to practice mindfulness, to return to the present, and to nurture our own well-being. And in doing so, we reclaim the peace that is always within us, just waiting to be rediscovered. Number 4. Benefits of applying Buddhist practices in the workplace. In the fast-paced, high-pressure environment of modern workplaces, stress is almost inevitable. However, what if the way we approach stress and the tools we use to manage it could change the way we experience work altogether? Buddhist teachings offer a refreshing perspective, one rooted in mindfulness, detachment, and resilience. By integrating these principles into our daily routines, we can achieve not just better productivity, but greater mental clarity, emotional balance, and resilience. These benefits don't just help us perform better at work, they bring us closer to inner peace, even in the midst of the busiest, most challenging days. Improved mental clarity. At the heart of Buddhist practice is mindfulness, the act of being fully present in the moment, free from distraction. In the workplace, this simple yet powerful practice can transform the way we think, work, and interact with others. When we are mindful, we are no longer scattered by the constant noise of emails, meetings, and notifications. We become more focused, more intentional, and more effective. Think of a calm lake. On a windy day, the surface is choppy and the water unclear. But when the wind dies down, the water becomes still and the reflection of the sky is crystal clear. This is what mindfulness does for our minds. It quiets the noise and allows us to see things clearly. The more we practice mindfulness, the less distracted we become, and the more we are able to make decisions with clarity and confidence. When we bring mindfulness to work, we're able to prioritize tasks more effectively, avoid unnecessary distractions, and focus on what truly matters. Decisions become more informed because we're grounded in the present moment, not overwhelmed by the past or future. In turn, this improves our productivity and helps us maintain a sense of calm, no matter how chaotic the day becomes. Emotional balance. Stress at work is often accompanied by emotional turbulence, the frustration of unmet expectations, the pressure of deadlines, and the fear of failure. These emotional highs and lows can take a toll, leaving us feeling exhausted and overwhelmed. This is where the Buddhist teaching of non-self becomes incredibly powerful. At the core of non-self is the idea that our identity is not tied to our work or achievements. We are not our roles, our titles, or our productivity. When we begin to let go of the attachment to these external identifiers, we free ourselves from the emotional roller coaster that work often creates. We start to see ourselves as more than our job performance. We become less reactive to the ups and downs and more able to respond with equanimity. Imagine the stillness of a mountain. No matter how the weather changes around it, whether it rains, snows, or the wind howls, the mountain remains unmoved. By practicing non-self, we can approach emotional stress in the same way. We recognize that work is just one aspect of our lives and that it does not define us. When we release this attachment, we find ourselves responding to stress with greater calm and stability instead of getting caught up in emotional fluctuations. Increased resilience. Life, including work, is full of challenges. Deadlines shift, projects fail, and misunderstandings arise. How we respond to these setbacks plays a significant role in our overall well-being. Buddhist teachings encourage us to see life and stress as impermanent. Just as the tide comes in and goes out, the pressures we face at work are temporary. They may feel overwhelming in the moment, but with the right mindset, we can endure them with grace and bounce back more quickly. When we embrace the idea of impermanence, We release the need to control every situation. We stop seeing challenges as personal failures or signs of weakness. Instead, we see them as opportunities for growth. Stress is no longer a sign that something is wrong, but a natural part of the ebb and flow of life. This mindset shift allows us to navigate difficulties with resilience, knowing that, just like the changing seasons, challenges will pass. In the same way that trees bend in the wind but do not break, we become more adaptable to change. We learn to roll with the punches, not by resisting the challenges, but by accepting them as part of the journey. This increased resilience allows us to recover from setbacks faster and approach new challenges with a sense of calm and confidence. By applying Buddhist practices to our work lives, we not only improve our productivity and decision-making, but we also nurture our emotional health and strengthen our ability to handle stress. These practices don't just help us cope with the demands of the workplace. They enable us to thrive. Inner peace becomes not just a distant ideal, but a tangible reality that we can access in the midst of our busy, sometimes chaotic days. As we cultivate mindfulness, emotional balance, and resilience, we transform our work experience from a source of stress to a source of strength. Number 5, final thoughts. In today's fast-paced world, stress seems to be woven into the very fabric of our daily lives. The constant pressure to perform, the endless to-do lists, and the expectation of being always on can easily overwhelm us. However, Buddhist teachings offer a transformative perspective that not only helps us manage stress, but also enables us to grow through it. The teachings emphasize that stress is not something to avoid, but rather something we can learn to interact with in a way that fosters inner peace and resilience. At the core of Buddhist wisdom are 3 key principles: mindfulness, impermanence, and non-attachment, each offering a powerful lens through which we can view and handle stress. Mindfulness invites us to be fully present in the moment, rather than being consumed by past regrets or future worries. Impermanence reminds us that everything, including stress, is temporary, and non-attachment teaches us to release the need for perfection and to detach from outcomes that we cannot control. By applying these principles, we can create a shift in how we experience stress. Instead of letting stress consume us, we begin to see it as a natural part of life, something that arises and eventually fades. This change in perception doesn't make stress disappear, but it helps us relate to it in a healthier way, transforming it from a force that depletes us into one that can propel us forward. Mindfulness, for instance, is not about silencing the mind or escaping from the noise of the world. It's about training ourselves to be present, to observe our thoughts without judgment, and to respond thoughtfully rather than reacting impulsively. In moments of stress, simply pausing to take a breath to check in with ourselves can make all the difference. This simple practice can clear the mental fog and bring clarity, helping us make better decisions and approach challenges with calm and focus. Similarly, the concept of impermanence teaches us that no matter how intense the stress feels in the moment, it will not last forever. The pressure of a deadline, the anxiety of a presentation, or the frustration of a difficult task, these feelings are all part of the ebb and flow of life. Just as a storm passes and the sun eventually shines again, stress too will subside. This understanding creates space for us to breathe, to pause, and to trust that difficult moments will pass, leaving us with the opportunity to move forward with renewed clarity and strength. Non-attachment is perhaps one of the most liberating aspects of Buddhist wisdom. It frees us from the pressure to control everything around us. When we let go of our attachment to outcomes, we allow ourselves the freedom to be present with the process, rather than being constantly consumed by the need to achieve. This shift reduces the internal pressure and allows us to work with more flexibility, creativity, and compassion for ourselves. It's in the acceptance of what is, rather than the constant striving for what we think should be, that we find true peace. The beauty of these Buddhist teachings is that they don't require radical changes or elaborate rituals. They are simple, everyday practices that can easily be woven into our routines. You don't need to be a monk or a meditation expert to practice mindfulness or detachment. Start small. Take 5 minutes each morning to center yourself with a few deep breaths. Observe your thoughts without judgment, and set the intention for the day. When stress arises, pause and remind yourself of the impermanent nature of this moment. Practice letting go of the need to control everything and simply focus on doing your best, without attaching your sense of worth to the outcome. As you incorporate these small but powerful changes into your life, you'll begin to notice a shift. The stress that once felt overwhelming will start to feel more manageable, and you'll find yourself navigating the challenges of life with greater ease. Your sense of inner peace will not be something you chase after in fleeting moments, but something you cultivate in each breath, each step, each choice. Buddhism isn't about escaping life's difficulties. It's about embracing them with mindfulness, letting go of the need to control, and finding peace in the process. It's a wisdom that speaks to the heart, reminding us that we are not defined by our stress or our work, but by the peace we create within ourselves. And with that peace, we become better equipped to handle whatever comes our way, not as a burden, but as an opportunity for growth. The journey to overcoming workplace burnout and stress isn't about avoiding challenges. It's about transforming how we engage with them. By applying Buddhist teachings such as mindfulness, impermanence, and non-attachment, we can change the way we respond to the pressures of work and life. These practices allow us to reconnect with inner peace and live more harmoniously, without being consumed by the chaos around us. Remember, you don't need to be perfect or have it all figured out. Start small, practice mindfulness, and allow yourself to let go of the need to control everything. By doing so, you'll not only ease the burden of stress, but also invite more clarity, focus, and peace into your life. If this resonated with you, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this video with anyone who might need a little more peace in their life. And if you're ready to take the next step in your journey, leave a comment below about how you're planning to incorporate these Buddhist principles into your daily routine. Let's grow together, step by step, toward a more balanced, peaceful life.